Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome to This Muslim Reads. I'm excited to bring you today's book. It's called Treatise on Prayer by Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. May Allah be pleased with him. This is a book that changed my life, changed the way I pray my salah. It was the first book that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided me to read after, one of the first books that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided me to read when I first began coming more towards Islam by Allah's leave. So I recommend that you definitely purchase this book. It's also available for free on Google. If you type the name, you should be able to get the PDF format for this book. If you want to learn how to improve your Khushoo in Salah, if you want to learn how to make sure that your Salah is not nullified, if you're just curious to know what are some of the mistakes that the early Muslims were making, and by early I mean just a couple of centuries after Hijrah, after the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the early Muslims migrated to Medina, just a few centuries after that, Muslims were making major mistakes in their salah, which Imam Ahmad, may Allah be pleased with him, noted, and which motivated him to write this book. So let's get right into the points, some of the mistakes that people make that we as a community are still making today, and see what Imam Ahmad recommends us to do, what we should be doing according to the Quran and Sunnah. First one is not before the Imam. So Imam Ahmad, may Allah be pleased with him, mentions this point, reiterates this point throughout the book, and I think this was one of the major issues that was happening during his time, although I can't say for sure, but just by the amount of time he mentions this in the beginning, he starts with this and he also finishes the book towards the end, reiterating this point. So he says that, wait for the imam, the person leading the salah, to go into ruku before you go into ruku. Wait till he goes into sujud before you go into sujud. Similarly, wait till he gets up from ruku before you get up from ruku, and wait till he gets up from sujud before you get up from sujud. What he was noticing during his time is people were either going into ruku and sujud before the imam, or they were doing it at the same time. So he's advising against that. He says you shouldn't be doing that because the imam is the leader. You should be following the imam, right? So that makes sense. It's quite obvious when you put it like that. Second piece that he talks about is takbir after the imam. So this has the takbir after imam has two sub points, if you want to call it that, has 2 points underneath it. So the first one is that wait till the imam completes his takbir before you make your takbir. So when the imam starts his salah and says Allahu Akbar, wait till he completes saying Allahu Akbar before you also say Allahu Akbar. Don't say it at the same time that he says. So this point and the first point, not before the imam, go hand in hand. So, and the second point under takbir after imam that he talks about is making sure that the imam has knowledge of fiqh. So he talks about an imam who might not have knowledge of fiqh, and because of that, what he might do is he might prolong his takbir. So he might say something to the effect of Allahu Akbar. So when you prolong the takbir, Imam Ahmad says that prolonging the takbir like that, what it does is it causes people to fall into the sin of the first point, which is they say their takbir at the same time. Right? So if the imam makes his takbir short, Allahu Akbar, then the people behind him can then appropriately say the takbir after him rather than saying it at the same time that the imam is saying it. The next point is not rushing in your salah, making sure that you're not stealing from your salah, from your prayer. A prayer is something that we should be rushing towards, not rushing away from. The other point is advising others. So here he talks about how if you don't advise others when they're making mistakes in their salah, then you are equal to you bear some of the sin, or you bear an equal amount of sin that individual gets when he's making the mistakes in his salah. So this was something that really kind of hit me in the sense that I was like, oh wow. So now if I see someone making mistakes in their salah, I need to get right on top of that and advise them. Obviously, this needs to be done in a tactful manner. This is coming from me. This is not what Imam Ahmad, may Allah be pleased with him, says about dealing with people in a tactful manner. Imam Ahmad just talks about advising others, but I'm saying that we need to do this in a tactful manner, because how you approach a situation, how you advise someone, will either determine whether they want to listen to you more, or whether they feel humiliated or they feel upset because you approached them in a very condescending way, and gave them advice in a very condescending way. So nowadays that's really, really important. So when you see someone making mistakes in the salah, advise them, but do it with hikmah. Next point is knowledge leads. So the person who's knowledgeable needs to lead the salah. So matters of religion, Imam Ahmad says, should be kept in the hands of the fuqaha, the qura, the imam, so the imams. So whoever's more knowledgeable should be leading the salah. Next point is the two pauses. The two pauses is something that I just learned recently. I was not aware of this sunnah. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, may Allah be pleased with him, mentions that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to pause in two places in his salah. So one was between the opening supplication and the next surah, and the other was between the next surah and the takbir for ruku. So right after Surah Al-Fatiha, after finishing Surah Al-Fatiha, there was a pause. Then there was, after the pause, the next surah was recited, let's say Surah Ikhlas. And then after the last verse of Surah Ikhlas, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ, there was a pause, and then the takbir, Allahu Akbar, for the ruku. So pause after Surah Al-Fatiha, then the surah, and then pause between the end of the last surah and the takbir for ruku. Next point is knees and hands. So Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, may Allah be pleased with him, talks about how the young people at his time, what he noted was a lot of the young people had a lot of energy and vigor, and what they were doing was when they were going to sujood, they were going with their hands first, and their knees would touch the floor later. And when they were coming up from sujud, their knees would come up first and then their hands. So he says that the opposite should be happening. Make sure when you're going for sujud, your knees touch the floor first, then your hands. And when you're coming up from sujud, your hands come up first and then your knees. So this is what he mentions. The gaze should be at the place of your prostration. So gaze should not be your eye should not be wandering around. You should be looking at the place of prostration, where your head meets the floor in sujud. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal then talks about praying in the mosque, how the brothers should be praying in the mosques, and he mentions, he quotes a hadith that talks about the individual who's considered the neighbor of the mosque. So the neighbor of the mosque should be praying in the mosque. This is for the brothers, right? Then the neighbor of the mosque is one who's 40 houses, within 40 houses of the mosque. So if you're within 40 houses of the mosque, according to him, you're considered the neighbor of the mosque. This is coming from him, not from me. So make sure you follow up with your local sheikh, your local imam, with regards to anything that you find is there's ikhtilaf in it and there's differences of opinion. Make sure you follow up with your local sheikh and imam about it. Keeping your back straight. This is in ruku. When you go into ruku, make sure your back is straight, such that when a cup of water is placed on your back, it doesn't spill. And then the last point is about humility. Approaching your salah knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your creator, you're standing in front of him, you are his creation, you're finite, you're weak, you're essentially nothing. You came from a drop of sperm, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your creator, and you were born and you have to die, whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he doesn't beget, nor was he begotten. So approaching him in a state of humility. And here Imam Ahmad, may Allah be pleased with him, reminds us of a story. He narrates the incident of Ibrahim alayhi salam, whose supplication was not accepted because Ibrahim alayhi salam became impressed with his prayer. So he was praying his salah the entire night, and then after praying his salah, he became very impressed with his prayer, and he said, alayhi salam, he said, how good is the Lord of Ibrahim and how good is his slave. So this was after he prayed the entire night in Salah. So long story short, some angels came to him, and then they informed him that the supplication that he had made after his Salah was not accepted because he was impressed with his prayer. So read the book for more details, for more quotations, and inshallah, I hope you have benefited from this session. Till next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.